We will now be looking at some footage from the Sierra Negra, Mexico telescope. The telescope is facing south from its Mexico position, and the star trails are rotating in a clockwise rotation. We will now be looking at the rotation of the stars from a stationary flat Earth perspective, and these obviously will be rotating in the clockwise rotation. Notice how this flat Earth perspective of the rotation of the stars matches perfectly with the time-lapse star trails taken from the Mexico telescope.
In 240 BC, a Jesuit named Eratosthenes, my apologies to any ancient Greeks among you, he calculated the Earth's circumference. He did that by planting a stick in the ground at midday so that the sunlight, being directly overhead, would cast no shadow. Simultaneously, about 400 miles away, somebody else planted the stick in the same way and found that the sunlight cast a shadow. So by taking a shadow length and knowing the distance between the sticks, you could theoretically work out the circumference of the Earth. Take note that this method requires that the sun be a long, long way away so that the light coming from the sun is all parallel. Just keep that in the back of your mind because we'll come back to this later. However, it turns out that you'd get exactly the same results on a flat Earth if the sun were only 3,100 miles away and 34 miles across. Now, as crazy as that might sound, I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind because we're going to come back to this as well. So now let's turn our attention to the sun. What do you think is wrong with this picture? Any idea? Well, take a look at the angle of the rays. If the sun was 93 million miles away, as I show in this diagram, well actually I can't really show 93 million miles to scale here because if it was, the Earth would be probably in the next town. Point is that at that kind of distance, all the light rays from the sun would be parallel near enough. And if you recall, Eratosthenes' calculation of the circumference of the Earth actually depends on the light being parallel from the sun. So when the light shines through broken cloud, it would hit the ground parallel rather than at this kind of angle. So if you're able to measure the angle of these sun rays, you can basically, with a bit of simple geometry, figure out exactly how high the sun is. And that turns out to be about 3,100 miles. And if you were going to try and hide this information, that the sun is actually very close, perhaps you'd encode it in symbol. Does this look familiar? We see in perspective. That is, the horizon is at our eye level. And as things recede from us, they tend to converge to the centre of that horizon line, to a place that's known as the vanishing point. Just as if you were standing at the end of a very long corridor, you would see that the walls would appear to converge. The floor would appear to rise up to meet the horizon, and the ceiling would also appear to move downwards. Of course, the walls and the ceiling are all parallel to each other, so they don't actually move anywhere, but it would just appear that way. And anything that lies beyond the vanishing point is effectively invisible to us. It's beyond the limit of our vision. The clouds in this picture are all at the same height, but the further they are away from you, the lower down in the sky they appear to be. And similarly, the further away the cloud shadows are on the ground, the higher up they appear to be. So now let's turn our attention to the moon. Many of us have seen the moon appear full at various times throughout the day, as in this picture. But how can that happen? If you're standing at point C, then it's the middle of the night. Full moon, no problem. And if you're standing at point A, it's early in the morning. Certainly, if you stare back at the moon in the night sky, then yes, you can see a full moon. But if you're standing at point B, which is midday, that is, the sun is directly overhead, then there isn't anywhere that the moon can be that will allow you to see it as full, because the sun will be illuminating the side of the moon that is facing away from you. So the best you'll be able to see is a sliver of the moon. Think about it next time you see the full moon during the day. Every month, the moon goes through 8 distinct phases. Always the same 8, always the same order, supposedly because of a relationship between the position of the moon relative to the position of the Earth and the sun. So let's say it's December, and throughout the month we see the normal 8 phases of the moon. But what happens when it's June, and the Earth is supposedly on the other side of the sun? Shouldn't the phases be reversed? That's not what we see. We see the same 8 phases in the same order.
Here's one last image showing a famous Earth shot from the International Space Station. It's beautiful. NASA uses Nikon, like I said before, so Commander Kelly has graciously taken a selfie of his own camera, so we see what model it is. We can even see that there's a massive fisheye lens on this thing. But knowing those two things is key ingredient in fixing the photos. So in Photoshop, there's a lens distortion correction filter you can use. You just plug in what kind of camera you have, what kind of lens you have, boom, voila, it flattens the image out and corrects the distortion, whether it's pincushion or barrel distortion or even fisheye. You know, the other thing that's going on in this photo here is, everybody will point out, there's a giant hot spot fairly close to the Earth. If the sun was in fact 92 million miles away, the Earth would be lit in a broad, illuminated, wide swath of light, and not just like a light bulb as we have here. That's just something interesting I've noticed.
Here's another proof that the sun is very, very close. If you will notice, this astronaut becomes invisible before he even gets through the door. The space station is a complete fake, fraud, deception, and a lie.
But, oh, did you see that? I mean, did this nigga just went invisible? I mean, is he Violet from The Incredibles? He has superpowers that makes him go invisible? Unlikely. Is he an alien? He's a secret race that can go invisible? Is that what you're thinking? What it is? We can all assume that it's video manipulation because nobody can go invisible, right? I can't go invisible. And if it was video manipulation, that means there wasn't enough space back there to actually enter. They had to fade him out. They had to lower the opacity, right? I mean, look, he's invisible.
Verified secure.
Next, jettison the now useless equipment, clean house in the Eagle, and rest for the next day's liftoff and rendezvous.
All right, I found a strange phenomena in this takeoff. The foreground at the lower left-hand side never seems to move, although they're taking off straight up. They shouldn't be taking off on a horizontal line. Now watch that crater, and down at the lower left-hand corner in the light, it doesn't move. It doesn't change in size. Just the top seems to be moving. And they should be taking off up to 50,000 feet straight up, not on some type of horizontal movement. Now you can see how clear the lower left-hand corner is. It stays clear. It seems to stay basically the same distance away. The top just seems to be flowing into the center of this picture. You can still see it absolutely as clear, absolutely the same distance away down on the bottom. And they should be going straight up. And what is that white thing that just went across?